My name is Jim Suddath, and I was raised on the south side of Atlanta. Got a chance to go to a private high school, Woodward Academy, that was a former military academy, and played sports there, played basketball and baseball in the 70s, graduated in 1977. Grew tall, had a chance to play college basketball, recruited around the southeast and parts of the nation, and decided to go to Duke University. Went to Duke University to play basketball in the late 70s, early 80s. I had a fantastic time there. I wasn't a star. I was a sixth man, first forward backup kind of person. Played for Coach K, famous Mike Krzyzewski. He was a coach that came in when I was a senior, so I had 1 year under him. My freshman year there, we played in the finals of the NCAA tournament. Got beat by Kentucky by 6 points in 1978, but I'll tell you right now, number 2 in the country is not bad. After Duke, waited for my wife to graduate. She was a year behind me. We were engaged in the Fellowship of Christian Athletes together and met each other there, and got married a year after I graduated from Duke. Taught and coached back at Woodward for a few years, felt called to the ministry. Decided to go to seminary as a big necessary chunk of my educational element to go into the ministry. Didn't know really what I was going to do. Thought about being a missionary. Had done some missionary trips. But after seminary, or right at the end of seminary, I met Ben Hayden, sort of a famous pastor from Chattanooga at First Presbyterian Church. This was 1988. That time I met him on an airplane. We had a 2-hour talk, and that led to him offering me a job. So I came to Chattanooga in '89, right fresh out of seminary. I didn't know a thing. I was young and foolish and excited about ministry, church ministry. I worked there for 12 years, did Camp Vesper Point, was an assistant pastor, youth pastor, did a lot of different things, developed ministry skills. And then after Ben left, a few years after he retired, I went on to be a senior pastor of a church in Jackson, Tennessee, which is West Tennessee. Did that as an initial senior pastor position at an evangelical church, a community church there. And after 5 years, got called to a different church in Dalton, Georgia, and that's where I am now. I have 4 children, 26, 24, 24, twins, and 14, a little caboose girl who's the light of our lives. We live in Dalton. I've been pastor at Fellowship Bible Church now for 3 years, 3+ years. Having a great time working with a great group of elders and deacons and just church leaders who do a great job. The whole reason I was even interested in FCA and also going into ministry in my life was because of a life-changing event that happened to me at the end of my high school career in South Atlanta. I had a friend and a coach, a basketball coach, who were believers. They loved the Lord. They were involved in FCA. And they came alongside of me during my very pressurized recruiting time of my life and shared with me what it meant to have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ, what the sin issue was all about, what the cross was about and the resurrection. And they loved me, they shared with me the gospel. And in that pressure time when I was being recruited by all these schools and just doing the teenage thing, I realized I was a sinner. I was in a classroom one day, a teacher was teaching, I bowed my head and I said, Christ, come into my life and make me a new person. I gave my life to the Lord on that day, and that started the change in my life to getting into the Word and getting into Christian fellowship. I'd done the church thing when I was a kid, but it didn't really mean anything. But this was a personal relationship with Christ I entered into at the end of my high school career. I've had a wonderful time in my Christian life growing in the Lord. Working with FCA, going to seminary, being involved with 3 different churches. All of that the Lord has used in my life to continue my growth curve and my maturing in the Lord, which I see is an absolute vital part of the Scriptures and the teaching of a believer to grow to maturity, to be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing, as James says. But I have realized that over my life, all of that was done in a kind of a haphazard, random, non-directional, catch a little here, catch a little there kind of way, grabbing things from this person, from this organization, from this institution, developing on my own, self-taught, self-discipled. And my growth curve has been all over the place throughout my 30 plus years of being a believer. And I didn't have an understanding of what it meant to be a disciple and make a disciple and repeat that process in a strategic and planned way. I did the typical American Christian thing before I was in the ministry, and after I came into the ministry, that was just random. Doing what I could as a minister. I've been a youth pastor. I've been an associate pastor. I've done banquets. I've spoken. I've done FCA talks. But I had never got it, what it meant to be discipled in a strategic way and then disciple another person who then would disciple another person. And it wasn't until a few years ago that I started to get that picture. A little over 3 years ago, I came back to Dalton to be pastor in Dalton at Fellowship Bible Church. And one of the very first weekends I was back in town, I came to a banquet in Chattanooga and ran back into an old friend, Bernie Ritterbush, who works for Men's Ministry Network in the greater Chattanooga area. Bernie and I had done some prayer conferences, some pastor prayer conferences back a decade before when I was still at First Presbyterian Church. And we had developed a relationship, so I saw him at this banquet, and we connected, traded business cards. He called me, we met a little bit, and he started to tell me about some of the things he was involved in strategically about disciple making and making disciple makers. And I started asking him questions. And he started filling in some of the gaps on how this really works in a strategic way and who he was networking with and how it was developing in this area. And then he started talking to me about the typical American Christian experience of people coming to Christ and having these random walks of how they grow in the Lord, not really having any plan or strategy. And I looked at him and I said, that's me. That's exactly what I've done, just what I had described a minute ago. I confessed to him, even as a senior pastor of a church, that is how I have grown in the Lord. And he looked at me and said, wouldn't it be a lot better, and isn't it more biblically sound for people to come to Christ and grow in the Lord and mature in the Lord and then reproduce themselves in a very understandable, clear, strategic, linear fashion? And I said, yes, absolutely. And he said, would you like that for a church setting? I said, absolutely. For the development of men, for the strength of households and families, for the turning over of the gospel to the next generation and the next generation, for men mentoring to men, and doing that in a strategic and clear fashion. That would be fantastic. Well, I kept networking with him. I started coming to the ATB dinners that have been developed over the last couple of years. I started seeing the big picture. And as a pastor, I thought to myself, I need this. I need this for myself. I need this for my church. So I decided I could not be a hypocrite. I had to go jump into the deep end of the pool. So at one of the ATB dinners, a year ago, I said, Lord, I'm ready. I'm going to be a disciple maker. I'm going to reach into the life of another man and do this one-on-one thing and be strategic about it and be clear about it. And I said, give me a man, Lord. The next day, a couple from my church came into my office and sat in my office, and they had some marital problems, a typical pastor counseling situation. And they were talking back and forth, and I was trying to untie the knot of their problems. And halfway through that meeting, God said, there's your man. And I stopped the counseling side, and I turned to the young man and I said, would you like to meet with me one-on-one so that I can pour into your life and help you understand where you are in your Christian faith and where you need to go and how you could reproduce yourself? And he just said, okay. And that started a relationship. And we have been meeting for over a year. And we've gone through some of the Operation Timothy. We've done some Bible studies. I've helped him with some other things that have helped his Christian walk. The marriage was healed. They had another baby in this time frame. His job situation has gone haywire. He's had to do some work out of town, which has caused some friction, which, I found out is part of the disciple-making process. So I've been through the whole gamut in the last year of how a man relates to another man in this Paul-Timothy concept, and what are the ups and downs of that, and seeing God's hand and God work in the life of this man. And now I've started another relationship with another man in my church, and I have shared this with my church leadership, and we are developing the strategy to implement this in a church-wide way within our church for men, older men, to help develop younger men, turn this over, do it in a regimented and clear fashion, and grow people in Christ, not in a random way, but in a linear growth, fruit-bearing way. And I'm very excited about it.